everyone. Welcome to the Backstage Classical Career Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Stroud, and I'm a classical violinist who started playing at the age of 3. I graduated from the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings at Mercer University with my bachelor's in violin performance, and I'm pursuing my master's in music at the University of Michigan. In this series, I invite esteemed classical musicians onto the show and interview them to tell their stories and give advice to share with others and preserve their legacies. Today, I'm joined with violinist Robert McDuffie, founder of the school where I completed my undergraduate degree, the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings at Mercer University. For those of you who aren't familiar with the McDuffie Center, it is a tuition-free college program of up to 27 string instrumentalists with world-class faculty members. Students receive a Bachelor of Music with electives in business degree, and there are a few students who pursue their artist diploma certificate as well. I would not be the musician I am today, and this podcast wouldn't exist without the McDuffie Center. Emmy Award-winning and Grammy-nominated violinist Robert McDuffie enjoys a multifaceted career. He has appeared as a soloist on 5 continents with the most premier orchestras around the world and has shared the stage with musicians such as REM bassist Mike Mills and Rolling Stones pianist Chuck Leavell. Phillip Glass dedicated his Violin Concerto No. 2, The American Four Seasons, to Mr. McDuffie, and he has performed it more than 100 times around the world. Mike Mills composed Concerto for Violin, Rock Band, and Orchestra for him, and he received an Emmy Award for A Night of Georgia Music with Mike Mills, Chuck Leavell, Rock Band, and the McDuffie Center for Strings Ensemble, which I was able to be a part of and is currently airing on PBS stations across America. Mr. McDuffie is the founder of both the Rome Chamber Music Festival in Italy and the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings at Mercer University in his native city of Macon, Georgia. Mr. McDuffie has a wide-ranging discography, and he has been profiled on NBC's Today, CBS's Sunday Morning, and in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. He plays the 1735 Guarneri del Gesù, known as the Ladenburg. Thank you so much for joining me today on my podcast. I've been really looking forward to this interview. So, how and when did you start playing the violin?
So I'm from Macon, Georgia, and my mother was and still is actually the grande dame of music in Macon. And she taught me piano when I was very small. I would pick out tunes by ear on the piano with one finger. And she had realized that a Hungarian violinist who had studied at the Liszt Academy in Budapest had settled in Macon, of all places, to teach in the public school system.
Mm.
And she thought, for some reason, since I could pick out music, that the violin would be a good instrument for me. So I actually started my first lessons at 6.5
Okay.
and studied with, well, actually, there were 2 brothers, but I studied with one of the brothers for close to 10 years before I left Macon.
Yeah.
But I hated it. I mean, I
Really?
hated to practice. What I should say at the very beginning, I truly
Mm.
hated it. But I guess my mother saw. You've met her. She's very energetic.
Yes.
She saw that I was talented and felt that I needed to practice. And she was. I like to say she stiffly encouraged me, but she made me.
Yeah.
She made me practice, and I hated it. I hated to practice, and you can imagine the arguments that we had.
Yes, I definitely had some of those myself.
Right, but when I heard applause for the first time, whoa, okay, wow, okay, that's a nice drug.
Yeah. Yeah, so and then you ended up going to Juilliard pre-college, if I'm correct, and then
Right.
eventually there for college. What was your time at Juilliard like?
It was transformative. I mean, it was everything. Musically, it was. Violinistically, it was. Relationships, the whole bit. I went up when I was 16 and finished my 2 years of high school at a school on Long Island and lived with a Juilliard pre-college teacher, a great teacher named Margaret Pardee.
Oh, yes.
She took in boarders, and I lived with her and her husband and another Juilliard student. Amy Schwartz Moretti also studied with
Yes.
Margaret Pardee,
Yeah.
and she was a great teacher. Gave me the kind of work, made me do the kind of work that I really needed. She had this rule that if I didn't practice 4 hours a day, I wouldn't get dinner.
Oh my goodness.
But then I was homesick, but we would go into Juilliard on Saturdays, and of course I did all the classes. I actually became concertmaster of the Juilliard Pre-College Orchestra and
Hmm.
made so many friends. First year I was really homesick. My senior year was much more fun. And then I moved into the college division and switched teachers, which was a rough experience for Miss Pardee and also for my parents more. I just felt that Dorothy DeLay was the right teacher
Hmm.
for me, and I've been advised by many people around Juilliard that that was the right move for me,
Hmm.
and that was it was a tough decision.
Yeah.
And I first met Miss DeLay at the Aspen Festival in 1976,
Mm-hmm.
and had my first lessons with her there.
Okay. Yeah. And speaking of Dorothy DeLay and Margaret Pardee, who are some of your other mentors and role models growing up?
Well, actually, I think my mother is my greatest mentor.
Mm.
Yeah, she's not. I mean, she's born in a little town in Georgia. Her parents had an eighth grade education.
Wow.
She came to Macon as a pianist and organist, and but her musicianship, she just she still does. She sings on the piano, and I just played a recital with her a few
Oh,
days
wow.
ago.
Wow.
And she's probably my real role model.
Yeah.
But there have been a couple, music and not music.
Mhm.
The two that come to mind are Yehudi Menuhin,
Mhm.
who took me under his wing right after I graduated Juilliard and signed with Columbia Artist Management.
Okay.
We had the same manager
Mhm.
at Columbia, and the manager put us together.
Mhm.
And for about 4 or 5 years, I traveled the world with Menuhin, playing mainly as a soloist with him conducting, but we did a lot of Bach double
Okay.
performances together
Mhm.
in Europe, in Holland, and Italy, and Poland, and all over the United States.
Wow.
And he was a man of the world, a citizen of the world, and opened my eyes to so many things. And
Yeah.
I really look back at that as hugely important
Mhm.
in my life.
Yeah.
And the other role model was not a musician, even though he loved music. I happened to meet a man named Harry Blackman, who ended up being a Supreme Court justice.
Oh, wow.
But he had heard me play, and we became close friends. I actually played at his funeral in Washington and for his daughter's wedding, and he officiated at my wedding.
Oh, wow.
But I saw so much in him that I was able to transfer into my own music making because I thought that he was the kind of because I probably would have gone into law if I had not
Mm.
made it as a violinist.
Mm.
And looking him interpreting the Constitution was close to my view of interpreting new music that had just been written, and also the standards, the traditional pieces. He looked at the Constitution as a living and breathing document. He was not a he didn't go by the mantra of judicial restraint. He looked at the Constitution as a starting point, and that as times change, he felt that it deserved a intellectual progressive interpretation. And I kind of like looked to him as I learned, the newer music, working with living American composers and comparing that to the work that I did with the standard pieces as well, not just playing, well, the Beethoven Concerto is a perfect example of a standard that I played well over 100 times in my career and never doing it, the same way, and wanting it to live and to breathe and and to become new again.
Yeah. Wow.
And so those, I guess, are my two, besides my mother, my two role models.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this. Very interesting. I love that kind of parallel between a Supreme Court member and music. Who would have thought? So, speaking of, you're kind of touring around the world and performing. What were some lessons you learned going around the world to different countries and different venues?
Lessons, I mean, to eat better and sleep and get more sleep. I mean, it was, there was a period in there, in my 30s and 40s, and I look at the ones now in their 30s and 40s who are constantly
Mm.
on the road. I mean, I was doing 120 concerts a year,
Wow.
but I was incredibly ambitious.
Mm.
I mean, I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, woe is me. I have to go play, book concerto with an orchestra. I mean, that's what I'd always wanted to do. So I'm certainly not, complaining about it. I think it was I think I handled it well. I was ambitious. What I learned is that I could have said no a little more. I learned it too late. I missed some of my family growing up, and that looking back on it, I regret that. I remember I was on a trip for maybe 5 weeks and was exhausted, and think I finished the tour playing. Oh, it was a crazy tour. It was a South American tour with Michael Tilson Thomas, and then we went up to San Francisco and I played the Beethoven concerto, and I was just exhausted and just fried, and showed up at home, and I just was so overwhelmed seeing my children, and I just felt really guilty that I'd been away from them. So I think a lot of soloists probably feel the same way with small children. So to the extent that I can, make it up, I'm taking my daughter to Buenos Aires next week. No, I mean next month, and
Wow.
along with Camille, my wife.
Hmm.
But I learned the lesson too late. I think in real time I was just having a blast making music and cultivating
Hmm.
relationships and becoming friends with conductors and orchestra musicians. I knew the orchestras that I truly loved, and we had poker games and stayed out late and traveled on the bus when we were touring and just having a great time. But there's definitely a conflict
Yeah.
there as you get older and realize that, yeah, I mean it was important to have that career, but I regret not spending more time
I
with
see.
my children.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a very difficult balance between, yeah, such an incredible career and family. Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, I did finally make a decision to. I'd fallen in love with Rome. I
Hmm.
was touring with the Santa Cecilia Orchestra of Rome in Japan,
Hmm.
and fell in love with Rome in Tokyo for some reason. We sang karaoke every night in the bar because they hated the food. And they invited me to Rome, and I was playing a lot with them there. And I realized, you know what? I'm gonna kind of take a sabbatical from playing, and I'm taking my family to Rome for about a half year.
Wow.
It was actually closer to 5 months, and the kids went to school in Rome, learned Italian, performed plays in Italian. Camille took sabbatical from her work. I did do a little travel, one trip, too many, but I did. I played. I remember I had a concertgebouw performance,
Oh, wow.
and I went to Leipzig. But there was one trip I made that I should not have made. So I missed my family then too. But overall, it was one of the best decisions we'd made. It was before social media started kicking in, and it was a beautiful time for our family when our kids were 12 and 8. So I do look back at that as a decision that brought us closer together.
Yeah, that's amazing. And speaking of, was there a moment when you did learn how to balance in a way that fulfilled you?
I think I've been fulfilled. I mean, it's, there are moments in life when they're rare, when you just kind of sit back and kind of take it all in, and you see that your kids have done well, and your wife is happy, and life seems to be as good as it ever gets. And those are rare, but it comes from doing a lot of your own work to get there, and for the most part making the right decisions for your children. And those are the moments that will stick with me more than, playing Vivaldi Four Seasons and Glass American Four Seasons in Carnegie Hall. As great as that was, but it's sitting back and seeing that your family is doing well. So I think I've tried. We
Yeah.
all, nobody's perfect, but I think they know that I love them, and we do have fun together. They certainly know me, and they have my number. So it's not. I'm certainly not treated as a soloist in my home.
Yes. So you have told me before the story of how you met and you played for Samuel Barber, his violin concerto here in New York.
Right.
Can you share that story with us? Mhm.
Yeah. Well, musically, I mean that's one of the five instances during my lifetime that were really life changing. I was I was a senior at Juilliard. I was concertmaster of the orchestra. There was a school competition, and the Samuel Barber Concerto was the required piece. So this is in 1981
Mhm.
and or 1980, I forgot. And nobody knew the Barber. I think there was only one recording out at the time. It was not a famous piece.
Mm.
I didn't even know it. I asked a friend of mine, Nicholas Mann,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
I asked Nicholas how it ended, and he said, "Well, it ends with really fast." I went, "Well, good, because I want that applause." I was a really, I had a great time at Juilliard, and I was pretty cocky, and behind those walls, it's safe. Juilliard students are safe behind the walls. We're very critical and judgmental, and it's fun to, you know, as you've heard me say, there's a reason rental car companies wait till you're 26 to give you a car. Our frontal, lobe isn't fully developed, and so we were cocky, talented, and immature. And so, yeah, I wanted to play a piece that ended real, real fast. Okay, I'll learn the piece. But Katrina, once I started listening to it and taking a deep dive into it, it just made me feel more American than I've ever felt. I felt patriotic
Wow.
learning that piece. And also, I felt close to the piece because it's not a perfect piece. It's a
Mm.
beautiful piece.
Mhm.
It's it's overly orchestrated.
Mm.
It's gnarly. He obviously didn't know anything about the violin, but it is, I think, the most imperfect, genuine attempt at beauty that I'd come across at that time. And I just embraced it and and fell in love with the piece. And I did love working on that crazy third movement as well. I won the competition. A mutual friend, a composer named David Diamond, who was a supporter of mine, went to Miss DeLay's studio and posted a note saying, "I heard Robert's performance at the Samuel Barber in the competition, and before his performance, which was going to take place two weeks later after the competition, I think it would be nice if Robert could come to Sam's apartment and play it for him. Sam's not feeling well, and maybe Robert will bring him out of his doldrums."
Wow.
And so I looked at that and said, "Okay, fine." It didn't. I wasn't even. I was I was so cocky. Yeah, of course I should go play for him. I mean, I won the competition. I'm gonna go. Yeah, of course I should go play for him. So yeah, I'm gonna go play. I'm gonna play for Samuel Barber. And we arranged a time. It was a Sunday night, and Leonard Bernstein was supposed to come as well.
Wow.
But that night he was being presented 60 Minutes, the TV show, was doing a story on Bernstein. And when I met Mr. Barber, he said, "Well, Lenny was going to come, but he wants to watch himself on TV." But I'm telling you, something changed the minute I walked into that apartment. Saw a frail man. He was dying of melanoma, actually. And he was very gracious and said, "You can ask me anything, just don't ask me one thing about Adagio for strings. I'm tired of talking about it, and I'm not going to talk to you about Adagio for strings." I went, "Okay." So I had a staff pianist from Juilliard, and we played through the concerto. He only yelled out twice at the very end of the first movement, where the only time the violinist has that I want to say Copland-esque type theme. Ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, 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 bum. And he just yelled out Dolce. And I'd been listening to Isaac Stern's recording of it, and Stern played it more marcato, and so I'm going to blame Stern on that one. But it really it makes the piece magical when you bring it down to nothing, because it's just timpani going with you, and if the orchestra can be brought down, it's a really magical thing. And he did the same thing at the end of the slow movement. He yelled Dolce as well at the very final gasp that ends the second movement. And I played the third movement. I nailed it. And he said, "Don't ask me about the third movement because I don't remember writing it."
Really?
But he did tell me the story of the young kid whose benefactor had commissioned Barber to write a concerto. He was, I think, a Curtis student. It was during the war. He was in Paris. He got $2,000 to write the concerto. He went to Paris. He had written the first two movements. The Nazis were about to invade France.
Mm.
Barber gets out of Dodge, comes back to Philadelphia, and shows the two movements that he had written to this young whippersnapper kid who proclaimed that the piece was too easy. And Barber wrote the third movement to show to just to make it more virtuosic.
Right.
And the kid couldn't play it. And even though he'd brought in Oscar Shumsky, like the great violinist who was in Philadelphia, and Shumsky almost sight read it perfectly, so it could be played. And there was a little disagreement about the money. The benefactor wanted his money back. I think Barber gave back $1,000 and gave the world premiere to Albert Spaulding, who premiered it with the Philadelphia Orchestra. And I think in maybe the early 40s. So, and we stayed in touch for a year, and he was going to come to Aspen to hear me play it at the Aspen Music Festival, but he just wasn't well enough to do it. But we did correspond during that year, and it was changed my life. And I realized actually my role as a performer, it's really about being a messenger of great art, and it's really not about me.
Yeah.
I play a big part in making the music, but it's really not about me. And that's why when I meet great composers and great authors, I kind of get wobbly knees because I have such admiration for the people who create beautiful words and who also make music that, I mean, just his simple. Do you remember School for Scandal Overture?
Yes. Yeah.
That was his exam at Curtis.
Wow.
And there's an English horn solo and an oboe solo. It's just so simple, but so beautiful and so American. It just brings tears. So I decided that I was going to champion American composers after that evening, as well as play as I say, the dead white European males.
Yes. Well, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of American composers, you commissioned the second violin concerto from Phillip Glass, the American Four Seasons. Can you share that story as well?
Right. So Phillip Glass, oh my gosh. So the most recognized American composer there is, he has his own signature. In fact, similar in many ways to Vivaldi, and that they had the constant repetitive ostinato with gorgeous melodies up top. But when I was a cocky Juilliard kid, we all had Philip Glass jokes. Knock knock, who's there? Philip Glass who? Knock knock, who's there? Philip Glass who? Knock, knock. And we didn't take him seriously, and we were really stupid to not take him seriously because he was I found out later, and when I read more about him and truly fell in love with his music. So about 30 years ago, my record company asked if I would do a disc of, actually, I asked if I could do the disc to Tellarn of the violin concertos of John Adams and Philip Glass.
Okay.
Philip Glass's first concerto. And there was a very good recording of Gidon Kramer and the Vienna Philharmonic.
Okay.
And my wife and I said, I think I'm going to record the Glass first concerto, the Glass concerto. He only had one. And so I remember us sitting on the floor listening to this incredible recording and just becoming mesmerized and drinking wine and just getting lost in the music, and realized that I had to learn this piece, and I fell in love with it immediately, and I was able to get a meeting with Mr. Glass before I went down to Houston where I made the recording, and to play it through for him.
Okay.
And he liked it. And he said, just one thing, I cannot listen to Kramer's recording. I said, well, why not? I think it's really great. He said, in the third movement, the triangle player is off. is supposed to be a syncopated rhythm, and the triangle player is playing on the beat. And I can't listen to that recording. So please tell the triangle player in Houston to make sure that it counts. And I ended up playing the piece a lot. And you asked me how I came to ask him about the second concerto. It all had to do with the Vivaldi Four Seasons. I wanted an opportunity to play the Vivaldi Four Seasons like everybody else, but who's going to ask yet another violinist, an American violinist, to maybe one invitation a year from an orchestra or something? It's something I realized it's something that I had to create. So I was thinking of a companion piece to go with Vivaldi and maybe take it on tour.
Yeah.
And who would be the perfect composer to pair with the Vivaldi Four Seasons? And only one name came, and it was Phillip, because there were so many similarities, same kind of criticism as well. Vivaldi had a critic that said that he wrote the same piece 500 times, and Phillip has gotten the same kind of criticism over the years. But I'd fallen in love with Phillip's music, and I think I caught him at a really good time because he was madly in love with a cellist, and he'd written some solo cello songs. He called them poems for his partner, and he had just written his third symphony, I think. And I knew that he was writing beautifully for strings. Oh, I know there was a transcription of the third symphony into a string sextet. Anyway, I thought it was the perfect time for me to approach him, and so you know, I took a sip of wine to calm my nerves, and I went to his place in the village, and I said, "Mr. Glass, I think that you're America's Vivaldi." And he said, "What? That's such a nice compliment. Thank you. I'm honored." I said, "Well, I'm actually here to ask if you'd consider writing an American Four Seasons." He said, "Oh, I like that idea." And I said, so I said, I'll just keep going. Well, do you mind writing it for violin for me and for the same instrumentation that Vivaldi used, strings? He said, yes, I think that's a great idea. I said, would you mind using a synthesizer instead of harpsichord to tap into the rock and roll Phillip Glass that turned people like David Byrne and David Bowie and Paul Simon on, that brought you into a different, much larger music world?" He said, Great idea. Great idea." I said, "Oh my gosh, this is just going, so well." And I went, "Well, Vivaldi wrote his own sonnets. I mean, what do you think about adding text to yours?" He went, Ginsberg, absolutely Ginsberg." Well, I guess I'm glad that didn't work out. And we didn't go that route, and we're thinking about making it a multimedia event with some kind of light show as well. But the music ended up being so fabulous, it didn't need any bells and whistles. So music speaks for itself, and he wrote me a masterpiece. And I saw on some list of Philip Glass's greatest pieces that the American Four Seasons was, I think, number 2.
Wow.
I forgot which list that was. Everybody has their own ideas, but it's a significant work, and he took it so seriously. It took 7 years to get it slotted in. So I would see him around town, and he would say, I haven't forgotten. But we ended up putting together this great consortium of commissioners: Toronto Symphony, Aspen Music Festival, London Philharmonic, and we had a 35 city tour with the Venice Baroque Orchestra, where they would use their Baroque bows and the Vivaldi, and modern bows for the glass. And they taught me Vivaldi. I felt I was teaching them glass. It was just the most perfect combination. And it's one of the, uh, something that I threw at the wall that actually stuck. And I've also played that piece well over 100 times and still playing it. And I love both concertos. And I think I feel like we did a good thing. It's an amazing piece. It really is. And it's achingly beautiful. And I'm really grateful that I guess a byproduct of all this hard work is that Mr. Glass asked me to perform his first violin concerto to celebrate his 90th birthday in Carnegie Hall with his Orchestra St. Luke's next January.
Wow.
In January of 27. I never thought as a cocky Juilliard kid that I would be considered one of the Philip Glass expert, as not the right word. That's not fair to say, but champion, I
Yeah.
think is a better word.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it is a really incredible piece. And I've had the pleasure of performing in the orchestra with you a couple times. So, yeah, I think that's an amazing story. Thank you so much to Robert McDuffie for sharing his stories from his amazing career. These stories are a large part of why I started this podcast, because I believe they're so important to keep alive and to share with others. Tune in to part 2 of Mr. McDuffie's interview in our next episode, where he talks about his violin, starting the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings and the Rome Chamber Music Festival, and building a career that is true to yourself. Thank you so much for joining me on Backstage Classical Career Conversations. If you would like to support this podcast, please leave us a rating and review on the platform you're listening to this on. You can follow us on Instagram at Backstage Classical Podcast, and be sure to tell your friends and family to share these career stories from some of the top musicians in this country. I'm Katrina Stroud, and it was great to see you here. Until next time, stay inspired and listen to the stories of others.